whenever.
Hello YouTube, this is Pat again, and I would like very much to have you start out with me here on the big tube. Now the first thing to weld in is this nut affair here that will hold the piece that we just welded in. Now as you can see, I've got about 1/4 of an inch of engagement here, and this is about 3/8 of an inch back. Now is this piece terribly important? No. Can it be a total piece of crap? No. It has to be pretty close. Now how am I going to do that? Well, number one, I've sat the two tubes together and set this tube almost all the way back, leaving about 3/4 of an inch. Number two, the nut will set 100% flat on it, and I'm going to clamp it in there really well and then weld it. Now, what does this have to do? Well, it has to be the nut plate to hold the other stuff to hold the previous nut into position. Now, if it's angled out like this, the bolts aren't going to go in. So it has to be reasonably close. And it's pretty hard to do because it wants to tip all the time. So we will help gravity onto our side. Bet you guys haven't figured out why I need a new vise yet. Right now I've set up on these two pieces here on the edge. Now they're pretty well true to the end of the tube, and this is possible because I machined the end of this tube. Now if you have not machined yours, or if it's just off, you're just going to have to kind of do the best you can with what you have at hand. In the end, what really counts is that this piece here, when it's welded in position, be square with the world. It has to be true to the axis of the vise. So what I'm going to do now is set up and tack this into position. I'm going to tack here and here. I'm going to flip it over and do 2 other tacks onto it. And then we'll go and we'll check and make sure everything's lovely. And if it is, then we will double check everything and weld this into position here, which is the jaw backup. And there's a few dozen things that went wrong in this. Number one, remember I told you that if they didn't fit together then, that they never would? Well, come to find out, I bought that lesson big time. Now as you can see, I've had to modify the thickness of this thing quite a bit. I had to mill it down and then grind it, make it look pretty. But they now fit pretty decent. Now number two, I also discovered that I had made these just a little bit small, so they will be remade. A little thicker. Now, there's 2 pieces in here that were made, and they're marked up to transfer the screws. And I thought I'd show you how to do that and why it's done. First reason is because it's a heck of a lot easier to tap these holes in these pieces before they're in this situation. Right now you'd need a mill that was really tall in order to reach up here and do it. Most people don't have that, including me. These holes here are 5/16 18, and they're tapped, and because of the nature of the weld, they're no doubt all over. I have transferred them here onto this piece, and I circled this so that you can see them a little bit. But see, they're just little prick marks from the transfer screws, and I'm going to show everyone how to go about doing that decent on the other 4. So if you'd bear with me while I do that, I would appreciate it. Okay guys, all I'm going to do is show you how to transfer some screws. Now the first thing to do is buy yourself some transfer screws. And these actually came from Heinemann Manufacturing. I've had them since the 70s. They are old as the hills, and I have no idea what they are like now. But Heinemann, I checked on the interweb, and they're still in business. So I'm going to assume you can still buy the exact ones I'm using here. Number 2, make sure that the hole is opened up. Now, as you can see, this one here has some crud in it. And you have to clean all the crud out of whatever tapped hole you're going to transfer. And that's what we're about to do here. Now there's 4 holes here, and we've done 1. I'm going to do all 4. Just because I've been welding and grinding here, and I think there's more than likely some crud in here. Now the last thing you want to do is have these screws trapped in a hole that isn't tapped right. So the first thing to do is make sure that the hole is tapped right, correct, square, on size, the whole 9 yards. Otherwise, you're just going to end up wrecking your screws. Not to mention the fact you'll end up with a hideous POS and a hardened punch-in to twist it off in there to boot. So whatever you do, don't loan your screws to the apprentice, because he'll screw it up for sure. Ask me how I learned that lesson. So anyway, now that I've tapped all 4, and I'm pretty sure that they're all good, again, it's just that you can't weld to the 10th, or even within 1/8 of an inch usually. And that's all the more that these are a heck of a lot easier to tap before they're welded, and after they're welded, they're all over the map. Now, these screws are actually pretty doggone nice. And like I say, they're by Heinemann. And there's 6 in here. But I only need 4 of them because there's 4 places. Now these are not overly complicated to put in. You just screw them down into the tapped hole, and they're going to center themselves up perfectly in the threads and allow you to transfer points out to where the screws will go in properly. Transfer of screw locations is a fundamental skill that I'm sure 98% of you have already perfected. But for the 2% that have not, I'm going to show it again anyway. Now I run them down in fairly deep because I can. Now I'm going to take the piece, and this piece here happens to be upside down right now to the way it's going to go on here. And all I want to do is check that the 4 screws are halfway level. And you can tell from the way this is rocking that they are not. And now they are. Now, I'm sure that everyone has wondered why in the heck I put these 1/4-inch screw holes in here, or 1/4-inch holes in. Well, number 1, I needed a way to get the Inventor to snap, and number 2, I always intended to use these holes here to allow me to transfer the screws. Now this happens to be a cut-off ejector pin, but it doesn't have to be anything special. Quarter-inch bolt would do. Anything that would line you up halfway decent will work. Now I'm pretty sure that I'm in the right location because I've got my pin in here. 4 screws set in here. It's right side up. All that's left is to mark the front. Now I've decided that the handle end here is marked F because I have no idea why not. So I am going to write an F right there. That way, no matter what, I can always come back and put it in the same. Now next, I'm going to hit this thing with a decent sized hammer in order to transfer the points up in here. Now it's going to be difficult for people to see this because there's just 4 little itty bitty prick marks in here. And you don't want to hit it real hard, and you don't want to try to use it. These are transfer screws, they're not a center punch. If you want to punch the hole and drill it in a drill press, then take a proper center punch and open these up. If you don't want to, well then don't. But right now they should just be a small little prick punch hole, and that's all the more they are, maybe 10 thousandths in diameter and just barely up through. But they are quite distinct. Now all of you saw me mark the F on here with a magic marker, and what I'm going to do now is stamp it on here so that we don't have to worry about it being erased. And there you go, it won't come off now, it's marked. Now why am I doing this? Well, because these holes here are not going to be straight, and I don't want to monkey around trying it multiple times in order to get it to fit. Number 2, there's 2 holes have to go in here to bolt it down, at least 2, maybe more. Now, does it matter? Probably not, but I do want it this way. Number 2, if by chance we decide we want to make a base for this for it to revolve on, we're going to want to pull this off, pick up center, put it in the lathe, and machine it down in order to be held into a some sort of piece to clamp it down with. I would think about a 15-degree on the side angle would do it. Doesn't much matter at this point. I'm planning on doing it straight. So now, what am I up to? Well, number 1, I've marked all these out really nice with a marker so that you can see them here. And that's all the more this amounts to. I'm not doing it for any reason other than to show it to you. Now, item number 2, when we go into the mill, we will pick up those locations, transfer the screws, and be done. So let's go do that now.